You are 12 years old when your father starts leaving folded $100 bills under restaurant receipts, like he's trying to prove something to himself more than anyone else. The watch changes first, then the car, then the way people react to him. That is the part you notice immediately. The waiter stands straighter. Your uncle suddenly listens longer when your father talks. Even the jokes land differently. People laugh harder around money. You learn that before you understand interest rates. 3 years later, you wake up at 2:14 in the morning and hear him downstairs in the kitchen speaking softly into the phone. Not angry, not panicked, just careful. Like someone trying not to scare the person on the other end. He is asking the bank for more time, pausing between sentences, rubbing his forehead the way he does when bills arrive. The strange part is the house still looks expensive. The car is still outside. The watch is still on his wrist. The money disappeared before the identity built around it did. That is the first time you understand money does not only change what a family buys, it changes the emotional temperature inside the house, the pressure, the silence, the way people sit at the dinner table without realizing they are holding tension in their shoulders. Before the money, your father was careful in a way that looked almost boring. Same gas station coffee every morning. Same hardware store jacket every winter. He checked prices without embarrassment, drove cars until the steering wheel leather started peeling near his thumbs. Nothing about him suggested ambition beyond stability. He was not trying to become rich. He was trying to avoid disaster. Your grandmother was even more extreme. She owned more money than anyone guessed, but lived like someone permanently expecting the economy to collapse by Thursday. Same wool coat for nearly 20 years. Same old sedan with faded paint and cigarette burns near the console, even though she never smoked a day in her life. She never used money to change how she looked to people. Your father hated that about her. He thought she lived too small, too cautiously, like fear had turned into a personality trait. Then he sold the business. After taxes, attorney fees, commissions, and every invisible hand that touches money before it reaches you, the account balance landed just under $1 million. Not enough to enter another social class. More than enough to stop fearing the old one. Your father did not think he was wealthy. He thought he was finally safe. That was the beginning of the liquidity illusion. The moment cash starts impersonating competence. The moment having money tricks you into believing you understand money. Everything changed after the first visible purchase. The changes came slowly enough to feel reasonable. A larger house farther north. Reservations instead of waiting lists. Vacations turning into routines instead of rare events. A heavier watch. Better wine. Nobody announced the shift while it was happening. That was the dangerous part. Comfort became normal faster than anyone noticed. The old diner disappeared from rotation. So did the cheaper grocery store. Your father stopped glancing at prices before ordering. Not because he became reckless, because the pressure that once forced restraint quietly disappeared. That was baseline inflation. Not luxury, not excess. Just a new normal that cost more every month than the old one ever did. Then the calls started. A cousin with a tax problem. A friend exploring a business opportunity. Someone from high school suddenly checking in after 8 years of silence. Nobody asked directly at first. They circled around money carefully, pretending the conversation was about something else. You started noticing how adults reorganize themselves around wealth. Who interrupts less? Who suddenly remembers birthdays? Who starts complimenting things they used to ignore? Your father noticed it too. And somewhere inside him, something adapted. He started wearing success the same way other people wear cologne. Not obvious enough to admit, just noticeable enough to change how rooms reacted to him. This was the social extraction phase, the point where money stops attracting admiration and starts attracting dependency. Then came the deeper shift. Your father was no longer just your father. He became the successful one. Every expensive dinner reinforced it. Every favor protected it. Every oversized tip, every loan, every purchase became proof that the identity was still alive. The dangerous part was never the spending itself. It was how reasonable every explanation sounded inside his own head. The car was safer. The house was an investment. The vacations were family memories. The loans were temporary. The opportunities sounded smart because smart people introduced them. Nothing looked irresponsible by itself. Together, they created a life that needed constant feeding just to stay standing. That was the moment money stopped being stored in value and became social fuel. Then came the security phase. The credit card balances disappeared first, then the overdue notices, then the quiet arguments after midnight. For the first time in years, the house felt lighter, less compressed. You hear your father say it once while unloading groceries from the trunk. We're okay now, but security has a smell to it. Other people notice it before you do. Security attracts obligation. Your aunt needs help with rent. Your uncle needs a short-term loan. Your cousin suddenly wants to reconnect over lunch. At first, your father likes it. Helping people makes him feel powerful in a clean way. Necessary. Respected. Useful. Then came the expansion phase. The first expensive car was not really about transportation. It was identity correction. For most of his adult life, your father felt one emergency away from humiliation, one medical bill away from panic, one missed payment away from embarrassment. Now he wanted visible proof that version of him no longer existed. The car sat lower to the ground than the old one, cleaner lines, quieter engine. He drove slower through familiar neighborhoods after buying it. Not consciously, but not accidentally either. For the first time in his life, he looked like the kind of man he used to assume had everything figured out. Lifestyle compounds faster than income psychology. That was the hidden rule. People invite wealth into rooms they would never invite struggle into. That was the beginning of the social capital phase. The phone rang more often now. Dinner invitations multiplied. Men your father barely knew suddenly wanted to pick his brain over steak and bourbon. Conversations started sounding different around him. Less personal, more strategic. You sat through dinners where everyone spoke confidently about real estate, tax shelters, private deals, market timing. Nobody ever sounded uncertain. That was part of the performance. Your father started entering rooms that used to intimidate him. Country clubs. Investment seminars held inside hotel conference rooms with soft lighting and expensive carpet. Places filled with men who talked like certainty itself was a financial asset. Generosity slowly stopped being generosity. It became expectation. Your father paid because he could. Then he paid because everyone silently assumed he would. Money changes how people calculate proximity. You learned that long before adulthood. Then came the sophistication phase. That was when the financial advisor appeared. Not aggressive, not obviously dishonest. Calm voice, tailored suit, perfect teeth. The kind of man who never rushed a sentence, because rushing implies uncertainty. He spoke in systems. Diversification, asset allocation, long-term positioning, wealth preservation. Charts with clean upward curves. Portfolios with names that sounded intelligent enough to discourage questions. Complexity creates artificial trust. That was the rule hiding underneath all of it. Your father sat across from a man explaining fee structures nobody fully understood, and for the first time since the money arrived, he looked relieved. Because complexity felt legitimate. Insurance wrappers, managed funds, strategic planning sessions, layer after layer of financial architecture that sounded sophisticated enough to silence instinct. Now I'm doing what wealthy people do. That was the feeling. Not wealth itself. Performance of wealth. Then came the absorption phase. The investments slowed down first. Then the loans stopped returning. Then the monthly expenses stayed exactly where they had climbed to. That was the problem. Lifestyle momentum does not reverse emotionally at the same speed it expands financially. Once liquidity drops below lifestyle momentum, collapse becomes mathematical. Your father still ordered expensive wine while quietly checking account balances in parking lots afterward. Still nodded confidently during conversations about future plans while calculating minimum payments in his head at night. The denial was never dramatic. It was administrative, quiet, spread across spreadsheets and postponed conversations. Then came the collapse phase. Not bankruptcy, not police lights, not some cinematic disaster where everything explodes at once. Just silence spreading through the house month after month. Sunday mornings changed first. Your father stayed longer at the kitchen table, staring at statements he already knew would hurt him. The calculator opened, closed, opened again. Nobody talked directly about money anymore because everyone could already feel it sitting inside the walls. Collapse is usually recognized years after it begins. That was the final rule. By the end, exhaustion replaced panic. The expensive objects lasted longer than the confidence that bought them. The identity survived months after the structure underneath it had already failed. Financial collapse rarely sounds dramatic. It sounds like a family slowly learning how to stop asking questions. And after enough time passes, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. You realize wealth did not create freedom inside your family. It created exposure. Every weakness that once stayed hidden under financial limitation suddenly had room to expand. More money did not remove insecurity. It scaled it. The larger the lifestyle became, the more there was to defend. The more your father owned, the more terrified he became of moving backward. Helping everyone did not strengthen the family. It dissolved the edges around it. Every unresolved problem slowly migrated toward the person with liquidity. Even the investing followed the same pattern. Sophisticated language, layered accounts, professional presentations. None of it removed risk. Complexity simply made extraction look respectable. And the losses were never sudden. That was the final illusion. Nothing collapsed in one catastrophic moment. The money disappeared through recurring dinners, through inflated routines, through emotional loans, through subscriptions nobody thought about, through upgraded expectations that quietly became permanent. That was the wealth absorption cycle. The money was not destroyed by one terrible decision. It was absorbed by a lifestyle that needed constant feeding just to maintain itself. Which meant the real failure was never financial. Losing the money was only the symptom. Losing the structure was the cause. And the worst part was not watching your father lose the money. It was watching what the money turned him into while it was leaving. You grow up believing wealthy people feel secure. Then you watch your father become more anxious with every upgrade, more distracted, more dependent on numbers continuing in the right direction. Before the money, stress came from survival. After the money, stress came from maintenance. You also grow up believing good intentions protect families. But once boundaries disappear, every relationship slowly becomes a negotiation disguised as love. Conversations begin carrying invisible invoices inside them. Gratitude becomes temporary. Access becomes permanent. Your father kept saying yes because saying no longer matched the identity he had built around himself. And then there was the final illusion that children do not notice financial collapse. But you remember all of it. Not the account balances. Not the percentages. Not the investment losses. You remember the atmosphere. The way his voice changed after midnight. The way laughter slowly disappeared from the house. The way expensive objects stayed visible while emotional stability quietly vanished behind them. You remember things disappearing one layer at a time. Vacations first. Then dinners out. Then certain conversations. Then eventually, the version of your father that existed before the money arrived. Children inherit financial psychology before they inherit money. Nobody warns you about that part. Years later, you think about your grandmother again. The old coat, the old car, the refusal to perform wealth even when she possessed it. Your father used to think she lived that way because she was afraid. Eventually, he understood something else. She was protecting structure. She never raised the baseline high enough for money to become identity, never allowed lifestyle to outrun emotional discipline. She understood something your father learned too late. Wealth becomes dangerous the moment it starts rewriting personality. He did not lose $1 million in 3 years. He lost the structure required to survive having it. If you want to understand the invisible systems that quietly control money, status, and power, subscribe. Because most financial collapses begin long before the numbers change.